Prismatic is shaping up to be one of the most broken things in the entire game, even with just what little information we have on it right now. In this one, I wanted to show you all an in-depth look of 5 builds I'm looking forward to on the Warlock. I absolutely love speculating and putting together content like this for y'all, so I really hope you enjoy it, and if you do, I will definitely extend this over to the Hunter and Titan as well. If you have any build ideas yourself, be sure to drop them down below, but with all that being said, let's nerd out on what little info we do have. Alright, so taking a look at the Warlock here, as you can see, the Prismatic background art looks absolutely insane, but there's a couple things I do want to go over before we jump into the builds. One of them being that Feed the Void will now actually proc on every single ability, but the main thing is with that is the fact that this will include damage caused by shattering frozen targets. So things like Bleak Watcher can actually proc Feed the Void now. All right, so taking a look at everything right here, there's a couple things I want to get out the way. Things like Storm Trance and Winter's Wrath, I'm probably never going to use these because they are ad clear supers. 9 times out of 10 in this game, you're normally using one and done supers just to do a lot of damage to a boss because your kits themselves normally can just ad clear and you really don't have to have your super to do it. So I'm pretty much never gonna include these in any of the builds. Now, on top of that, with Nova Bomb being a thing alongside Needle Storm is just generally better than Nova Bomb, so that kind of just ends Nova Bomb because you might as well just take Needle Storm, and even playing into some of our fragments, you're definitely going to want Needle Storm over Nova Bomb. And then if Song of Flame is good, I am including this one. Obviously, we don't know much about the super quite yet, other than we get a bunch of ability cooldown when we cast our super, so that could be pretty good. So I will be taking this one into consideration, but pretty much these 3 supers right here are just kind of worthless in my opinion. Nova Bomb just really isn't as good as Needle Storm, and then again, 2 ad clear supers when your kit's going to be able to do it just really isn't worth it to me. Now for your class ability, I'm pretty much always running Phoenix Dive because it has a lower cooldown. You can run Healing Rift and Powering Rift, whichever one you want to, but Phoenix Dive is just so nice. It gets you out of so many sticky situations. Jumps up to you, obviously Burst Glide probably being the best in most cases. And then for all the other stuff, a lot of these will be interchangeable, except for something maybe like Pocket Singularity, because let's be honest, PvE, this is probably the worst melee in this list. And then the other thing to point out is the exotic class items. The ones we do know are Assassin's Cowl, which when you get power melee kills, you will go invisible. Synthesept, when you're surrounded by enemies, you'll get increased melee damage. Caliban's Hand, so when you get power melee kills, you will ignite enemies. Star Eater, so when you pick up an orb, you will overcharge your super, and then how many ever supercharged stacks you have, your super does more damage. And then fitting aspects, you increase your weapon handling. We're not going to be using that one, at least in PvE. And then the 6 Coyote, it said they granted additional dodge in the Vidoc, but since these are universal, I imagine what this is actually going to do is just grant you an additional class ability. Obviously, this is speculation, this isn't confirmed, but I'm not going to be using this too much in any of the builds anyway, but I think that's probably what that's going to mean. But all right, with all that out the way, let's jump into our first build, and this is going to be the Melee Warlock. So first off, supers, I'm taking Needle Storm. Song of Flame, if that's good, I can't take that. Song of Flame is going to actually change your grenade once you pop it. I'm not sure if it changes your melee, but this could potentially be very good if it doesn't change your melee, because you can have a bunch of melee charges going over and over again, so you can proc everything else we're about to go over. If not, Needle Storm, just very good single target aim and super, and it'll play into some of our fragments. Now, again, Phoenix Dive, pretty much always taking this all the time, except in one of these builds. It just has a faster cooldown. It heals you, heals your teammates. I just think it's generally better than a Rift, and you can build into it with its faster cooldown. Now for our melee, we're going to be taking Arcane Needle. Now I'm not really taking this to use it. I'm taking this because you get 3 melee charges of this, and we're going to help use that to proc Lightning Surge. Now if you don't know what Lightning Surge is, this is the thing where you can basically slide on the ground, you're going to teleport, you cause a huge AoE with your melee, and this will actually jolt enemies as well, so keep that in mind. So this is basically like a melee ad clear grenade type thing. It's very, very strong, honestly, and they even said they're going to be buffing a bunch of aspects to potentially even be getting a buff. So having 3 charges of this to ad clear is going to be very, very nice. Now for grenade, I am going to be taking a healing grenade, since I could just jump in there with lightning grenade. I can throw this on myself if I ever do need to heal myself a little bit, so this is just nice to have for survivability. And then we're going to have Feed the Void for more survivability, so every single ability kill we get will proc Feed the Void, which will grant us Devour. This is going to be the buffed Devour, so you will heal to max health every time you get a kill, and you also get grenade energy, which can refund into your healing grenade. So if you're ever in a sticky situation again, you can throw your healing grenade. You're going to constantly have health with this build, and you're going to want that because the whole point of this build is to try to get in as many people as possible. Now for our fragments, we're going to be taking Facet of Balance, so when we rapidly defeat targets with light damage, it grants melee energy. Since Arc is a light damage, that means if you get a bunch of melee kills, which is what this melee wants to do, you should be getting melee energy back, which is obviously very nice because you can refund it to do it again. On top of that, we will will also be taking Facet of Dawn, so melee hits against targets will make you radiant. This is going to be nice because I am going to be taking Monte Carlo, and if you know how Monte Carlo works, whenever you get a melee kill, you'll basically get max stacks of its damage boost. You can then pair that with Radiant to do even more damage, and with Monte Carlo, you will also be generating melee energy like crazy, which just obviously means more lightning surges. Now, next up is Facet of Hope, so whenever you have an elemental buff, your class ability regenerates more quickly. Since you're always going to have Devour up all the time, even amplify it with Lightning Surge, this just means your Phoenix Dive can cool down faster. To have another survivability tactic, kind of like a healing grenade, if you ever are about to die, throw a healing grenade or Phoenix Dive and you're just solid, you're good to go. Now, Facet of Protection, so when you're surrounded by enemies, you are more resistant to incoming damage. This is also very nice because you want to melee a bunch of people, you want to be in there, so now you're just taking reduced damage at all times. And then Facet of Purpose, so whenever I pick up an Orb of Power, it's going to grant me a buff depending on whatever super I have equipped. And that's why I was saying Needle Storm is probably going to be your go-to, because since it is Strand, you will get Woven Mail. That is a 45% damage reduction on top of all the healing you're getting, and you should theoretically pretty much be unkillable with this unless you just get one shot by something. Now, if you are running solar, you will get Restoration, which is also good. Since Restoration can already come from your healing grenade, I think Woven Mail will be better, just having the damage reduction, having the constant healing, and again, Needle Storm is also still a very good super. Now, the things we can play into, we have seen that all three of these exotics are going to be on the class items. If you take something like the Caliban's Hand, your power up melee attack, your Lightning Surge, will be able to ignite enemies alongside Jolting, because that's what the melee already does. And then with Syntheseps, if you're surrounded by enemies, it will do more damage, and since you're teleporting in there, you're always going to have this proc when it goes to hit an enemy. So your Lightning Surge is going to do more damage, it's going to jolt enemies, it's going to ignite enemies, and you'll be healing off of it constantly. And if you even play into mods where you can generate orbs on melee kills, you can proc Woven Mail off of it too, so it is going to be disgusting. And you can also opt in for Assassin's Cal to go invisible, so instead of maybe getting an ignite, you can go invisible, which is nice. But in all honesty, with the amount of survivability you already have, I don't really care about going invisible. Just igniting things, jolting things, just add clearing everything with a melee ability. You have 3 charges of it, and you can recharge them very, very quick with things like Monte Carlo. This build seems like it's going to be a ton of fun, and definitely one I want to try out whenever I get everything unlocked. Now, we also could have better fragments to play into this. These are just, again, off the fragments that we do know. There are going to be a lot more fragments that we can unlock, but for what we have now, this is already cooking up to be pretty spicy, and I'm very excited to try it out. Now, next up is going to be a Threatling Warlock. We obviously already have a Threatling Warlock, but I honestly think this one could potentially be better than the one we do have. Obviously, we're going to be taking Needle Storm for the super. Again, it's a very strong super. Alongside that, it also makes Threatlings. Phoenix Dive, again, just faster cooldown. You can take whichever one you want to. I'm going to be taking Incinerator Snap because I think this is just the best base melee that is offered on all the ones you can choose, because you can snap the ground to cause and ignite. Does a ton of damage. You can kind of view it as like a mini grenade in a way if you do know how to use the snap properly, and they can also stun unstoppable champions. Next up is obviously going to be a Threatling Grenade because we're making a Threatling build, Weaver's Call, and then alongside that, Feed the Void. Now, Weaver's Call is very interesting because in the trailer, it did proc off Phoenix Dive, and since Phoenix Dive has a lower cooldown, that means you can proc Weaver's Call more often, which is going to mean more Threatlings. If you have perched Threatlings, you can obviously also send them out with Weaver's Call, so I imagine you're going to be able to have Threatlings everywhere with this setup. With Feed the Void on an ability kill with your Threatling Grenade, and maybe even Weaver's Call can proc it, this just means you're going to get max health, and you're going to get that increased grenade energy because you're going to have Devour up at all times. So more Threatling Grenades is always going to be nice. And then if we look at our fragments, we're going to have balance, so whenever we rapidly defeat targets with dark damage, we get grenade energy. This is going to be sick, obviously, because more grenade energy. And then if we pair that with something like Rufus's Fury, which can roll Demo and Hatchling on it, this just means this fragment is generating grenade energy, your aspect is generating grenade energy, your Rufus's Fury is generating grenade energy, and you're also making more Threatlings to play into the Threatling aspect of the build. You're going to be able to just throw Threatling grenades everywhere. Now, on top of that, I'm also going to be taking Facet of Hope, so whenever I have an element buff, my class ability recharges quicker. So again, you can have Phoenix Dive up more often to proc Weaver's Call more often, and then Protection, so while I'm surrounded by enemies, I'm more resistant to incoming damage. This is probably going to be a staple in every build, just because obviously taking less damage is always nice. But then also Facet of Purpose, so again, whenever I pick up an orb, I'll be granted Woven Mail. Very, very strong. Feed the Void, you get healing on every kill, you're going to have Woven Mail at all times. 45% damage reduction, healing every kill, you're going to be pretty much unkillable. And then Facet of Dawn, so power melee hits against a target makes you radiant. This one's honestly up in the air because these right here are the 4 main ones that matter. I kind of just threw this in here for what we did have. Any of the ones we know kind of will work with this, but just being able to make yourself radiant if I do get a snap, I guess can be nice. But this one will 100% be swapped out once we have some better fragments, once we finally get to know what those are going to be. Now, obviously with this build, we're going to be taking swarmers because now our threatlings will be able to unravel targets, and when we destroy tangles, we'll make 2 threatlings. Now in the Vidoc, it did show that tangles can be made, so you're still going to be able to make tangles even if you are running prismatic, so you can still take advantage of the threatlings from the tangles, and all the tangles you make unravel enemies. And that does open up so you don't have to run arcane needle, and you can run a different melee, and that's why I opted to take incinerator snap. So you're going to be able to just make threatlings everywhere with your grenade, with your weapon, and with your class ability now that will all unravel targets, make tangles. Your tangles make more threatlings, and you're healing with 45% damage reduction on pretty much every single kill, and you can even stun unstoppable champions with your melee. This seems like it has potential to be very strong and even better than the threatening build that we currently have in the game. Now next up is going to be the damage lock, or the all-around lock. I think this is just probably going to be the go-to for most people. This is probably going to be what a lot of people use in maybe something like the day one, because right now we don't even have all the information. It already seems ridiculously strong. Again, Needle Storm for the super, or maybe Song of Flame. We'll get back into this a little bit later. Phoenix style for the class ability, Incinerator Snap again for the same reasons. You can, basically have a very high damage melee that can stun unstoppable champions. Vortex Grenade, and I do have Storm Grenade small right here. I'll get into this again later once we jump into everything else. I'm also going to be taking Feed the Void again. This is going to be a common trend because Feed the Void is just going to be absolutely broken. And then I do have Touch of Flay right here, but this is supposed to represent the Hellion aspect. So whenever you use your class ability, you'll make the little solar soul. Obviously, we don't have the picture for that one quite yet, so I imagine this as a little Hellion. Now, for our fragments, we're going to take Bravery, so whenever we defeat an enemy with a grenade, we will be granted volatile rounds for our void weapons. Any grenade will proc this, so you can take Storm or Vortex, mainly Vortex for this setup, but now whenever we kill an enemy with our grenade, will be granted volatile rounds, and obviously we can get grenade energy back with Feed the Void. Now, your void grenades weaken, or your arc grenades jolt targets. Now, this is what I'm talking about with Storm Grenade. You can either have a weaken grenade, or you can have a jolt grenade. What could be interesting is if you run something like a jolt grenade, you could potentially throw your Storm Grenade, jolt the enemy, pop your Prismatic or Transcendence, and then you're going to have that void and stasis grenade, so you could also weaken. So you could have jolt and weaken at the same time if you time your Transcendence, but that's obviously up in the air. We don't exactly know how that's going to work, but overall, I probably would just recommend taking Vortex, so you just can always weaken enemies. And we all already know how strong Void is with things like this. Now, again, Hope, so whenever I have an elemental buff, my class ability regenerates more quickly. Protection, so when I'm surrounded by enemies, again, I'm taking reduced damage, very nice. And then Purpose, so whenever I pick up an orb, I will get Woven Mail since I am taking Needle Storm. Now, if you do run Song of Flame with this one, you will get Restoration, which is nice because you don't really have a way to get Restoration with this build. You won't be able to constantly reproc it unless you keep picking orbs up, but that is also going to be nice, so you can kind of swap those out depending on whatever does the most damage. Now, that's going to depend on how Star Eater Scales works. Now, we do know that Star Eater Scales is going to be a class item thing, so we're going to be getting more damage, and if this works with Song of Flame and does more damage, you're probably going to be taking Song of Flame, but if it doesn't, you're probably going to be taking Star Eater Scales with Needle Storm, so your Needle Storm can just do a ton of damage. You can weaken an enemy with your grenade. You can probably even do this with the Transcendence one, and then you could throw Needle Storm at max stacks of Star Eater Scales and just do a ton of damage with the super. Now, I do have some other options down here, like I was talking about with Six Coyote. I think it's just going to grant you 2 class abilities, so you could have 2 Phoenix styles, which is cool. And can you imagine if something like Nezarec Sin, you can't really see it down here, and I had Varys Brow there for some reason, but if Nezarec Sin is also like a class ability thing, so whenever you get kills with Void, you get more ability generation. That could be something for every class now. But imagine if that's the thing paired with Star Eaters with this entire build, so you're constantly getting grenade energy with Feed the Void. You can even get something from Nezarax if that is a thing, but even without it, you're still getting the super damage, which is very nice. And then you can even pair that with something like Recluse over here with Repulsive Brace and then Indomitability Origin trait, so you get even more grenade energy on light kills, and you also get a Void Overshield that will pair with Woven Mail, that will pair with Feed the Void. You're going to be literally unkillable. Your super is going to do a ton of damage. You're going to be able to spam weaken grenades all the time. You have your class ability up a lot if you need to for survivability, which will also proc Hellion, which will do more damage because it just sits on you for around 20 seconds. It constantly just shoots out, kind of like an Arc Soul. And you even have one of the best melees in the game to stun Unstoppables that can cause ignitions, and pairing that with Hellion, you can cause ignitions even easier because both of these will scorch. And you do have the option of Song of Flame that is good, but again, Needle Storm is probably going to be the go-to depending on how strong Song of Flame is. And all this is just going to be disgusting. You're going to have volatile rounds for Recluse as well, and you're literally just going to be unkillable, doing so much damage and generating so much grenade energy. This is probably going to be my go-to build for sure, and obviously this could change around once we get more fragments unlocked, but I mean right now, just looking at this entirety, like, it seems like this is just gonna be the strongest thing in the game. I mean, like I've already said, you're gonna have crazy super damage, you're gonna have crazy grenade regen, you're gonna have crazy class ability regen, and everything is just gonna play into each other. Some of the best ag clear in the game, some of the best damage in the game, and this is what I will probably be taking into the day one raid, depending on if we do get some other stuff that's broken. But this already seems like it's going to be the most broken thing for the Warlock. Now, this one is just supposed to be a fun one. I'm calling it the 5 elemental rifts. I mean, you're supposed to do all elemental damage while also spamming your rifts, and you're going to want to place your rift down a lot because you will have Weaver's Call and Hellions. So now every time you place it, you'll make threadlings, and you'll also get your little solar buddy. So you kind of make little companions every time you place the rift. I am going to pair this with Empowering Rift and Secant Filament, so I'll get Devour when I place a rift down. So that's kind of taking away Feed the Void, so you can actually run 2 other aspects. So you still will get the grenade regen, and the grenade I'm opting to take is Storm Grenade. This is going to be our way of doing arc damage. I do have Penumbral Blast to do stasis damage. This can also stun and stop champions, which is nice. For super, again, same 2 things as always. For fragments, Bravery, so whenever I defeat targets with a grenade, I'll get volatile rounds. I'm going to be playing into that with something like the Title with classic contender, so every kill I get will actually give me class ability energy, which is nice because you want to get your class ability back a lot to spam Hellions and Weaver's Calls, and also proc Devouring yourself. Now, I'm also going to be running Dominance, so my arc grenades will be able to jolt targets. So now my Storm Grenade can jolt enemies, which is very, very nice. And then I'm also going to be running Hope, so whenever I have an elemental buff, my class ability recharges faster. This with Classy Contender should be able to recharge your Rift extremely quick, so you can spam this all the time. Then Protection, so again, I'll have the damage reduction when surrounded by enemies. And then Purpose, again, so whenever I pick an orb up, I will either get Restoration or Woven Mail, depending on what super I run. So again, just very tanky. You're going to be able to spam your Rift a lot. I don't think this is going to be anything crazy, especially compared to that last one, but it could be a fun little interaction. It's something to build into. And if they do end up buffing some of these other things like they said they might do, it could potentially become very strong. Now, the final one a lot of people are probably wondering about is going to be the stasis turret lock, and that is because we do have things like Bleak Watcher now alongside Feed the Void. This will be able to proc on Feed the Void, so you can have a bunch of grenade energy if possible. Now, your grenade doesn't matter because if you are running Bleak Watcher, it will have the cooldown of the Glacier Grenade. At least that's the way it works now. I don't know if it'll work like that with the new Prismatic, but I imagine it will. So I just opt in to take Healing Grenade if I ever need to use it on myself. You know, you have that as like a backup, but you're really only going to be using this for Bleak Watcher. Now, I'm running Arcane Needle because this will let me unravel a target. I can have Unravel alongside slowing enemies with these 2 together, which is probably going to be very, very strong. If you have Unravel on a boss alongside being able to slow and constantly shatter that boss, that's just going to be a ton of damage that's passively working for you in the background. Phoenix Dive again, Needle Storm, Song of Flame, same old, same old. Now, for fragments, balance is going to be nice because whenever I deal damage with a dark weapon, I will be granted grenade energy. Again, running something like Rufus's, it's going to be doing strain damage. Have Demo, it's just going to equal up to more grenade. With Feed the Void, with balance, with Demo, you're going to be able to spam Bleak Watchers all the time. You can opt in to take any darkness weapon. It doesn't have to be Rufus's. This is just one that I knew had Demo, so I threw it on here. But you also have Hope, so again, elemental buff, your class speed recharges faster. You're going to have this literally all the time, so you might as well take it Phoenix Dives just to have it just in case if you're about to die. Protection, you get more damage reduction. Purpose, so again, you pick up an orb up, you're going to get Woven Mail or Restoration, very, very strong. And then Ruin, so it's going to increase the size of the burst whenever I shatter a stasis crystal or a frozen target. So since you're going to be able to freeze targets a lot, you can just make it so when they blow up, they do more damage and have a larger radius, which is nice for ad clear. And I think overall, just being able to spam these turrets are going to be very, very strong. And exotics to pair with this are obviously going to be Osmiomancy Gloves, but imagine if we get something like Eye of Another World, and you can't really see it, but these are Frosties, into one class item, so just passively generating more grenade energy. And then alongside, if we sprint, we also get more grenade energy, so we'll be able to spam even more. So the whole point of this, just build into a ton of grenade energy. You obviously can do that with this setup, and you could just spam Bleak Watchers literally everywhere and just have them do all your bidding. But taking a look back at this masterful art of just red marker everywhere, I think the ones I'm most excited for is definitely the melee lock. I think this has potential to be very fun, very, very strong as well. Definitely the damage lock. I've already yapped about this one enough, but I think this is going to just combine the best of pretty much everything we already have, put it into one, and you're pretty much going to be unstoppable. And then I think turret lock probably has a good amount of viability. I don't know if it's going to be as strong if you just play into the stasis one, but I think it definitely does have potential. For the other ones, I think are going to be interesting to play around. It could be kind of fun. The threat lock could potentially be better than the strand, but definitely be on the lookout for this damage lock one alongside the melee lock one. These are for sure the first 2 I'm building the moment I get into final shape. Anyways, though, that's going to do it for the Prismatic build speculation. If we get more information in the future, I can put another one of these together for you all if you all like to see it. And like I said in the beginning, I also can do a Hunter and Titan one if that's also something you would like to see. Anyways, though, I really hope you all enjoyed and got an idea of maybe what you want to build. But thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. Peace.